introduce you. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to New York City for many of you who have traveled far and wide. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Carol Carter, and I'm the founder and CEO of GlobalMindED. I'm here also with Celeste Gardner, 6 of our board members who you all will be meeting, and we're thrilled that they're able to be here as well. We have so many people from California and Kentucky and Louisiana and all over the place. And we have a student at almost every table. And actually, let's have you stand up if you are a student so we can give you a round of applause. Yay. Awesome. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our partner, Janet Salazar. She is the executive chairman of the Foundation to Support the United Nations, and GlobalMindED a few years ago was really honored to become an official initiative of Janet's organization, and it has been incredible to work with Janet and her community, and we've got merge lane of lots of different people at these tables so you all can meet each other. So please welcome Janet Salazar.
We just whispered to each other, I love you, and I love you back. It is an honor to be here with each and every one of you. I am truly delighted on behalf of the Foundation for the Support of the United Nations and, of course, GlobalMindED. Welcome. We hope that when we stepped into the gates of the United Nations this morning, we left a lot of whatever it is that we have outside, and we bring our complete selves here. Because today is all about GlobalMindED and its mission. And that mission is about the young people that we have in each tables with you right now. You saw them stand. I met some of them this morning. It's all about our youth who we're not only celebrating today, but also really making sure that they see how we can collectively gather together and make sure that we elevate them and take them to the next level, which is exactly at the core of what Carol and her group is doing at GlobalMindED. Also, I wanted to take this opportunity for each and every one of us to just realize that whatever chaos are going on outside not only of our country here, but also around the world, at the end of the day, it's all about seeing the humanity in each and every one of us. So I'd like to just encourage everyone to take a couple of seconds to pause in moments of silence and be in solidarity with all the people who are suffering around the world right now with the wars and the earthquakes, etc., and just pray or however else you wanted to send your positive intentions for a more peaceful, collaborative, and really just society. Because at the end of the day, again, like I said, it is the humanity in each and every one of us that brings us closer together, that binds us. It's the common thread. It's the reason why we're here together. We could be somewhere else, but we chose to be here because of that thread, that humanity that we treasure, that we value in each and every one of us. And as long as we have that in us, atrocities and terror and everything else and evil will never prevail. So let's take a few moments of silence, please. Thank you. So let's give ourselves a round of applause for each of us for being here and just uniting for today's shared goals. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. So I'll just share a couple of things about who's in the room today. For those of you who don't know, GlobalMindED is about creating a capable, diverse talent pipeline. And we connect students to role models, mentors, internships, and jobs. And that means getting students to the table at places where they normally would not be, with people who they normally wouldn't see at their college campus. So we know that to have a truly inclusive world, we have to have a world where all of us have bigger and bigger circles. And we are so honored today. We have, I think, about 10 college presidents in the room. Can we have the college presidents in the room stand up, and we'll give them a round of applause as well. So those college presidents, many of whom we work with, they get our students to the table sometimes 4 times a year, sometimes monthly, because they are co-creating the solutions on their college campuses with these students. And we know that for our students to graduate and get into what we call promotion pathway jobs, they have to have the agency while they're in college. They have to learn to have a voice. They have to learn to contribute and be part of the solutions that we're all solving for. And those are the people that are able to get the jobs where they can go on someday and hold the title of president or CEO or entrepreneur like Liz Elting, and also serve on boards and contribute in our society and give back. So that's what we're about. We were fortunate last year to have an event at Georgia Tech and had a lot of our STEM leaders, and we are recording this today. We'll send everybody the links so you can share it out widely with your networks, and we'll have those session by session. So we intentionally have you all with different people at your tables. There's a student at almost every table. But we really wanted you all to meet people that you don't know as well. And that's really part of the magic of GlobalMindED is we define inclusivity about as broadly as you could possibly define it. And we know that making sure everyone is at the table, flattened hierarchy, everyone is an equal, we're all learning together and we can all contribute at the highest level. So that's what we're about. And as we always say, our words are temporal, but our deeds endure. And today is really about looking at our deeds at the end of the day and what we can do to make a difference. So without further ado, we start a little bit late because we were having such a great time, everybody meeting each other. But I want to welcome Janet back to the stage and Chris Marsh. And Michael, come up. We have an incredible panel to frame the entire day today. And we'll have you all come up and let's give this first panel a round of applause to set our day.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning again, everyone. We are thrilled that we'll be opening this session with our opening panel, and this is about innovative models of funding and opportunities. I am delighted to welcome on stage with me Chris Marsh and Michael Maquet, both UBS, and I will actually just wanted them to each briefly introduce themselves. I think that's better, and in case I miss something and I don't give justice to the amazing gentlemen that we have here with us today. So, Chris, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, with pleasure. Thanks, Janet. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Perfect. Just checking. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be with all of you here today. Just looking around the room, getting to meet and speak with a number of you and the incredible backgrounds that are represented, not only in what you're doing in this moment, but where you've come from and what that presents as possibilities as we go forward. My name is Chris Marsh. I've had the privilege of working at UBS for the last 20-plus years, 24 years. 4 years based out of Zurich, Switzerland, 4 years based out of this New York area, and then the rest out in Southern California. So who else from California? There we go. Okay, we got a few folks who made the cross-country flight. Hope you had a more effective or efficient trip than I did, but it's great to be here, not only in New York, but specifically here with you, Janet, and the collaboration opportunities that really define us. In addition to working at UBS, our family is very involved when it comes to thinking about inclusive education. And how do we think about new models, new approaches? How do we find ways to be respectful of what's worked in the past, identify some of those learnings, and be innovative in thinking about new approaches? So thrilled to explore some ideas with you today.
Thank you, Chris. Mike?
Great, thank you. Very nice to be here, everyone. It's really incredible the positive energy that's palpable when you get a group of people who are passionate about the same cause. And so I'd like to thank Janet and GlobalMindED and Chris for inviting me here. I also work at UBS, although not nearly as long tenured nor distinguished a career as Chris. But my real reason for being here is that elevating educational outcomes is a genuine passion of mine. It started over dinner in San Diego when we were comparing notes about work, and then Chris said, all right, forget work. What do you really care about? Like, what's your passion? And I started talking about education, starting from pre-K education up through, preparing skilled talent for the workforce. And he said, boy, do I have an assignment for you. And so be careful what you share with people because you never know where you'll end up. So, and then I will say that in terms of words being temporal but deeds enduring, I spend a lot of time at the University of Virginia. I'm going to refer to a lot to it with examples because we're very focused on this. And I'm currently chairman of the board of the College Foundation at the University of Virginia.
Terrific. Chris, why is today very important? What's the relevance of today's overall topic and, connecting that to what you do with UBS and together with Michael?
Yeah. I'm so glad you had everybody take a moment this morning to just pause and reflect on where we are at this moment in time with all that's going on in the world around us. And it just feels so almost polarized in the sense that there's an element of our population today that is getting so caught up in the moment and kind of missing where we've come from. And I'll share one word that I would encourage us to all consider, and that's worldview. What does worldview mean to each of us? For me, it's this combination of values that we were raised with, that we're shaping, that we're hoping we can define ourselves by into the future. It's our real life examples, our stories, but it's also that ability to empathize with others and learn from their stories. And in this moment, Janet, it feels to me like we as a world have got to figure out how in small groups like this, we can start to understand each other better, we can hear one another better, we could understand each other's worldviews on a deeper level, and find those common areas, common passions and priority interests that really can take us forward. And I just want to give a quick shout out because I think what Janet, the team here at the United Nations, the broader foundation support for the United Nations has done with the UN Sustainable Development Goals creates such a powerful framework with which we can identify those points of alignment, those areas of passion and priority interest that we might all have. Certainly education's a key one, which is why we're here this morning. But we're also probably multifaceted in that sense and seeking to understand each other's worldviews well enough to find points of commonality, convene conversations, and figure out how we could move together is a big part of why I think we're here today.
Thank you, Chris, and very thoughtfully shared. Thank you so much. And this is actually the reason why GlobalMindED and the Foundation for the Support of the United Nations came together. Carol and I met here in the same building many years ago. And to what Chris said, when you have that common core values, it doesn't matter if it's from your families, from your friends, or the organizations that you work with or you serve, you just gravitate to each other, and the force that you bring together collectively makes it more powerful than, be able to make that change that we so badly need right now, like what Chris mentioned. Thank you so much about that. Chris, Mike.
So when you and I first spoke and you shared with me the planned agenda and so on, I was really drawn by the many issues that are going to be addressed today, because a lot of those issues are things that will either develop or quash the sense of belonging and that humanity that people lose and become desperate. And it's not just keeping back educational opportunities, it's keeping back general inclusion. And those things are, obviously funding access to resources, but also the environment, health, social and cultural issues. All of these conspire to make things difficult for people to be their best selves. And sort of parallel or not coincidentally, also keep people from getting the best educational opportunities, whether it's as young children growing up, whether it's higher education, et cetera. All of those factors go in to keeping everyone from getting access to the same opportunities. So I'm really excited to be a part of this broader look at what we as a community and society can do to improve that.
Thank you, Mike. And to that, you know, we go deep dive now then into really outcomes-based projects and programs that both Chris and Mike are a part of and actually driving forward through not only UBS but also with the University of Virginia. So Chris, can you share with us? Okay, before this actually, the three of us had like, okay, you do the micro and I do the macro. So that is amazing. I'm gonna start with the micro. Yeah, Chris?
I'll actually let Michael start with the macro, because I think it's a really important point, though. I've long ago checked out on efforts being good enough. And how do we think about really making sure that when we calibrate our focus, we're really focused on driving outcomes? And that needs to be measurable. Not everything is measurable, but there needs to be measurable impact. You want to touch on outcome-based approach?
Yeah, so I think that I can't remember whether it was 3 or 4 years ago, but Jim Ryan is the current president of the University of Virginia. And when he arrived, he outlined a plan that by 2030, the University of Virginia would be not just great, but good. And he was very concrete about what good meant. He's a little biased because he himself is a first-generation college graduate, a college attendee, but that was almost the cornerstone of his building blocks as to how the University of Virginia can make a greater impact on broader society and not just be an elite institution of higher learning. And that focus on first gen, talk about outcomes, you can see it in the numbers. The class of 2025, they're still there. 12% of the people who matriculated were first gen. Today, in the class of 27, who just started this fall, that number is 17.5%, and 16.4% of the incoming class are Pell Grant eligible. For those of you who don't know, Pell Grants are federal funding that's available for people with extremely limited financial resources. And one encouraging sidebar there, all of you college presidents definitely feel the pressure from your alumni, I'm sure, but people really care about rankings, and we all poo-poo them, but we immediately click on them as soon as they're out. And what's great to see is that the U.S. News, at least, and some of the others, are looking at number of Pell-eligible students who graduate from that institution. So now they have a really strong and visible incentive to make sure that those students are successful. So they're being held accountable for the outcome. So I think that that's really encouraging. One thing that I will give President Ryan credit for is that it's not just about admitting those students. Getting the opportunity is, quite frankly, probably the smallest piece. And not to diminish the efforts to give people the opportunity, but the challenge is, are you prepared for that opportunity? Are you supported once you're there to maximize your odds of success? And so there are a number of different initiatives that we've undertaken at UVA to improve on all of those. And it starts well before the kids even arrive on grounds. There's a program called Who's First Look for first generation and low income students. It's a 3-day, 2-night academic preparation and instructional seminar to get the students to realize this is what you can expect if you come to UVA. So you're a rising junior in high school, you know what you need to focus on for your remaining 2 years. In addition to that, separately, there's an organization called Rise Together. It's a student-run organization that works throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia to not just, I don't want to say preach the values of higher education, but at least to present to a lot of these kids who have no role models for that higher education might be for them. Just because no one in your family is gone doesn't mean you can't go. And it doesn't stop there. It then provides the mentoring and tutoring to make them as prepared as possible for whichever institution they go to, whether it's UVA or any other institution. So they arrive at campus hopefully with a little bit of preparation. They're not blindsided at this point, but we have programs that go beyond there. There's something called FLIP, which is the First Gen Low Income Partnership, also a student-run organization. That's a theme at UVA. We're kind of crazy about that. And it's a student-run group that champions the causes of first-gen and low-income students. It pressures the university to provide specific resources that will be helpful throughout their however many years they're there to make them as successful as possible, whether it's mentoring, academic advising, help selecting courses or getting into courses, et cetera. So they're not sort of left to their own devices like, hey, aren't you lucky you got this opportunity? I hope you make it work. We really are trying to provide support for them along the way. And then finally, because as many of us who went to college know, it's not just about the classroom. Getting the most out of the college experience is a lot of co-curricular and extracurricular activity that low-income students don't have the resources to participate in. So they'll very often, I feel terrible just talking about it, but you feel like you're here but you don't belong, and you can't participate in everything that they do. So the university got a group of private donors together, and the university offered matching funds and created what's currently a $10 million fund on its way to $40 million, where students can apply for a $500 grant to participate in a conference that they otherwise couldn't afford to go to, or supplies for pre-enrichment or pre-professional training courses, or to perform undergraduate research. So the point of highlighting all of these efforts is that we realize that it's not just about setting aside a number of spots. It's not just about identifying someone who did really well on their standardized tests, so that kid's going to be successful. There's so much more that goes into it, and it's incumbent upon us who've been fortunate enough to sort of, A, provide the resources, but also the time, the deeds that make the difference to sort of ensure that these opportunities are available to a broader set.
I love it. Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. I think that, I just want to kind of quickly highlight a couple of things from what Mike shared with us. The most important thing, number one, is that really it's about creating an entire process. That's why we call it, this is basically talking about all the outcome-based models, right? It's from point A, point B, and then to C, and after that, but also before that, right? Because again, like I said, if we do not address, the entire process and create an entire ecosystem supporting this process and models, that student, somehow along the way could get lost, right? We might not be able to take him really or her from point A to success pretty much. So this is very important. I kind of just wanted to highlight that. And for those of us here today, especially mentors and sponsors who are still looking for more effective ways to be part of this entire ecosystem through support in whatever capacity, I think it's very important that later on, if you find time to talk to Mike and connect better on how really, how these models really can work and adapt them to whatever it is that you're starting or whatever it is that you're moving forward, I would encourage you to do so. Yeah, because again, I couldn't emphasize in it, more. And it applies to all industries, women, education, etc., right? If we do not build the entire process and ecosystem, we do not prepare each way to make sure that, whoever needs our help gets from point A to success, like I said, it's going to be challenging. We will find ourselves 10 years from now and still in the same room talking about the same issues and nothing's happening. So this talk is very important because we really just wanted to drive what is working, what are models that are working, and how do we scale this, how do we, support this and make everybody successful along the way. Chris.
Yeah, I just want to build on this exact point you're hitting on, Janet. All right, so we've all probably heard of logic models, right? Simple framework, 3 columns, think about on the left side, what are our inputs, what are the outputs, and then what are the outcomes? And if we just think about how do we design with intentionality some of the programs that we're looking to lead and look for those collaboration opportunities, by not just focusing on the inputs and the outputs, but really thinking about what creates that total success that you were just describing, Mike, I think it actually causes us to rewire what we do and how do we think about it. So I'll give you a couple quick examples because I know we're going to be tight on time and Janet's going to move us along. One, that I'll go a little bit earlier stage to what Mike was just describing from the college side and say, how do we actually get that first-gen student ready for college and ready for a success in life and career? So we've got a program out in San Diego. It's called the Monarch School. Very simply, this is a school dedicated for the unhoused children in our community. And specifically, under No Child Left Behind Act, it actually had to have congressional exemption every year to be able to be a public school and select its students. Selection criteria was very simple. Unhoused, meaning in a shelter or on the streets within the last 12 months. Okay, so we know what this population is, we know how to identify it. We've got inputs. How do we think about not only bringing them into classrooms, not only a school day, but how do we think K through 12 about creating a pathway to really catch them up to their age level peers? So San Diego as a community got together and noticed the explicit need for this type of approach, but also a need to think differently in how we would wire it and how we would actually make it sustainable and not just dependent on philanthropy or the limited public school funding that would be available to all, because we really needed to catch these kids up to age level peers. So long story short, over the past decade, the community got together, raised over $70 million, bought a facility, redesigned it with a very intentional approach, of course with classrooms, lunchrooms, gym, and the like. But then, Monarch School, right? We have a butterfly boutique, fresh underwear, socks, opportunity to take showers in the mornings. For many of these kids, their day starts well before the school day starts. So let's think about that not at 8:30, let's think about it at 7. How do we get to the mindset of being ready to learn, being proud of oneself, being ready to step in and say, how am I going to impact the world with this learnings, right? Throughout the school day, a traditional type of education opportunity. But when you go to Monarch School, you don't see a lineup of SUVs sitting out front at the end of the school day. There's a lineup of shopping carts. And that doesn't take you, I don't know what does. It is stuck with me forever in terms of the just seeing where the school day could end for some and how do we actually think differently. So as a community, we've actually built a whole series of education programs combined with fresh, like nutrition, sports programs, a whole series of other after-school activities that this community would never otherwise have access to. I mentioned sustainability. The whole idea of thinking about the outcomes of what we wanted to achieve here was more than just great learning. We needed to think about ways to actually make this thing enduring and to really create a whole impact on the human or on the individual student, as well as the family unit, whatever that might be. And it's very different one to the next. And so remember I mentioned the community bought this building and built this school out. The community owns it as a foundation, okay? Leases it to San Diego Unified Schools. The lease payments come back into the foundation and are redeployed to actually double up the teacher-to-student ratio. Just think about that, right? Inputs, outputs. How do we think about outcomes? Wait, let's go back. What is the input, and how do we rewire this, right? And so I would submit to you that there's learnings in models like this, and the Monarch Project is the foundation around this. There's learnings that really kind of, for me, trigger a whole different way of thinking about the logic models, the design of a long-term and overwhelming sort of broader success. And I would submit that if we don't think about those outcomes, we're totally missing the opportunity to actually make these things sustainable and not just put forth those good efforts.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris. The Monarch Project, yes. So again, I wanted to drive two very important words based on what Chris and Michael have shared, and this is opportunity and sustainability, right? These are the most important things in the entire ecosystem and process. We provide the opportunities every step of the way with these outcomes-based projects and programs and initiatives, and at the same time, with what Chris just pointed out, sustain. We have to sustain, we have to make sure that the process works, the ecosystem works, by sustaining them every step of the way through innovative ways of funding, through support, and little things as as simple as preparation of breakfast and having fresh socks and showers and all that. So thank you, Chris. These are really driving home what we needed to discuss here and share with everyone. I hope that those of us who are here, again, like I said, who are still, looking for more knowledge and just outcomes-based, ways of doing better things. I hope that we're learning from Chris and Mike. I know that we're tight for time, but Mike, would you want to add anything? And then lastly, I wanted to ask, what is it that you're passionate right now at the moment, presently, and how is that driving you, and how is that inspiring you, and how is that making you connect to the overall work of GlobalMindED and the reason why we are here today?
Okay, I'm going to abuse the power of the talking stick by adding my points to Chris and then immediately answering your question, at least from my perspective. So the model that Chris shared about the Monarch School is probably one of the most elegant public-private partnerships that I've ever heard of. It is messy when you combine public and private. It is really messy. And so, but sometimes necessary. I was looking through the UBS Optimus, which is our philanthropic arm at UBS, and education is one of the key tenets or focuses for them. And one of the many studies that they commissioned, I think it was by the Center for Global Development, were looking at why the educational outcomes in Liberia were so poor. And a lot of it was because the schools were government run. And it was corrupt, it was inefficient, et cetera. And they studied 8 random private organizations and found that 3 of them kind of came up with at least roughly the same outputs. However, the 5 of the private ones had double the efficacy as what the public model was. And so a lot of times it's hard to step away from the fact that private is often more efficient and more outcome focused than governments, which tend to be more input focused. How many kids are going there, what's the dollars spent, et cetera. The second thing is that at UVA, I use that because I'm familiar with the numbers, it's a public school, but less than 10% of the budget comes from the state. And so how do you ensure positive outcomes with such small support from the state? And there are a number of ways to do that. We won't go into detail on any of them. But oftentimes, you have to approach your philanthropic partners, asking them to fund things that their immediate answer is, isn't that what the state is there for? Like, wait, you want me to pay for you to hire teachers to teach first-year students? I'm really confused. I thought we were a public school and so on. And it's like, well, if you want to elevate outcomes, we need to reconfigure how we teach those incoming students, and it's not cheap. You need more teachers because you have to lower the number of kids in there. You need more space because that's more classes. And so, dear concerned alum or company that loves hiring UVA grads, if you want us to continue to improve educational outcomes, you're going to have to get past that hang-up you have that this is a public institution and contribute for better outcomes. So then the question about the passions. So in spite of my involvement with UVA, my real passion, really disappointed I didn't win the lottery last night because I had plans for that. And those plans were really centered around pre-K education, really because this is something that, elevating outcomes based on so much more than just giving the opportunity has been something that's been on my mind since, the 80s. I'm such a nerd. But I remember when affirmative action came in, and then we had situations where it was like, well, you see, gave them the opportunity, they weren't as successful. It's because they weren't equally prepared. Like, you really need to provide that educational support early. Put a pin in that. Also, because I don't believe you need a college education in order to be successful and a really productive and fulfilled member of society. The combination of those 2 points make me hyper-passionate about pre-K education and sort of introducing children very early on to a passion for and a love for learning. Learning shouldn't be a chore. It should be something that they're excited about. I have not thought about what that program would look like, but when I win the lottery, that's where it's going. That's my passion. And then the second thing that I'm really focused on right now is, like Chris, I work at UBS and I cover family offices, so multi-billionaires who have so much wealth that they have an entire staff of professionals who help them run everything from their investments to their philanthropy. And one thing I keep hearing more and more as those multi-billionaires are younger and younger, have a little less perspective and context in the world, they're like, ugh, charities are so inefficient. Like, I have to give for tax purposes, but I don't want to. So outcome-based philanthropy is sort of a hobby of mine or a passion of mine right now. I'm trying to learn more about it, and I don't know if you were going to mention any of that, but that's something that UBS is big on.
Yeah, I'd love to just build on that if I may, Janet. So first of all, I want to give a shout out to Morgan Stanley, and you're in for a treat with Carla this afternoon and hearing a little bit more. And I think we, as an industry, we want to play an activating factor in how to think about these outcomes in new ways. And a part of the dialogue we have with families and family offices around the world is around how impact philanthropy is juxtaposed with impact investing. The only difference is, what did you expect in return? Right here, right? And so if we start to think about where impact investing and impact philanthropy actually start to come together, and where there's so much more alignment around those passions and priorities that our SDG framework help us to identify and collaborate on, we actually have a whole lot of potential to think about this. So a couple last examples and then a passion. One of the things that UBS tried to do in proving out this education outcome-based approach was work with a couple of different organizations in building one of the most unique development impact bonds. So if you want to Google UBS Educate Girls, you'll see a development impact bond that we've put together over the last decade, specifically in Rajasthan, India, specifically looking at the state in India with the highest dropout rate of young girls in the education model. I'm only going to give you the 60-second version of it. If you are interested, we could go a lot deeper. But this taught us a ton about how to think about these inputs, outputs, and outcomes. We've got multiple organizations working together. Educate Girls, as a nonprofit, actually led it, together with the Ministry of Education in the state of Rajasthan, over 110 villages participating, and specifically designed this program where we put the funding forward at the beginning as a bet on we're going to drive outcomes. But we've had a third-party payor, in this case a CIF, who agreed if we hit these measurable objectives, they'd repay all the upfront philanthropy. Well, that sounds kind of interesting. What could you do with that, right? First year, getting multiple organizations together with the Ministry of Education, trying to overcome cultural norms that had become the norm, and young girls dropping out on average at grade 5. Hard, messy. At the end of the day, second year, third year, patient capital that was in not for 1 year type of funding, but patient capital focused on that outcome, caused a whole series of innovations, helped really drive to those outputs and outcomes, 116% achievement on the enrollment numbers, 160% achievement on the actual measurable learning-based outcomes. CIF repaid plus interest all of the upfront investment, which provides then scale capital, because it's already been donated, provides a whole different set of capital to then think about how do we recycle that through the system and think about scalability. So I use that as an example of development impact bonds being an innovative approach with which we can think about driving these outcomes. I'll skip over some other ones we've done in the human trafficking prevention and some other things for the sake of time, but suffice to say, I'm really passionate about how do we think about inclusive education regardless of that worldview, regardless of where did we come from, regardless of where those current circumstances are impacting those around us, and how do we think about that from a new lens. So on a personal level, our family has been confronted with a rare mitochondrial disease, and my 15-year-old lost most of his central vision about 2 years ago. Boy, has that taught us a lot about where the education system is prepared for those with disabilities, where our employment system is, and our employment models are ready to support that, and really the superpowers that exist within those living with disabilities. We've even created a little employee network. The DIS is crossed out. Don't diss my ability. There are so many superpowers to think about how do we actually bring those to the forefront, how do we educate effectively, how do we mentor them through different challenges, and how do we put people on a real path to success, which is why we're so thrilled to be here. So thank you.
Very powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we don't have much time, but again, if you wanted to learn more, it's Chris and Mike later on over lunch, going around. But thank you once again, Chris and Mike. It's an honor. And Carol, thank you for having us again, opening the panel. Thank you all so much.
And as they're exiting the stage, one of the themes of today is how do we make our circles bigger? And you don't learn about what it's like to know that sex trafficking is happening out there, and you don't know what it's like to work with people who might be deaf or vision impaired, and you don't know about people who aren't from zip codes of privilege if you're not in circles that look different than the ones that you travel in. And so very much what we're about and what today is about and our collective work is about is understanding those bigger and bigger circles that don't have to do necessarily with lived experiences that we might have had. So thank you again for a wonderful session. We're going to do a little change up here. We're going to get ready for our next panel. And you all can have a real quick coffee break and be back in your seats in 8 minutes. All right.